Okey-doke. So, Sam Purnell. At the minute, I use two types of reed. Rico plastic cover for bright and loud. I also use Mandarin Red for jazzy and slow stuff. To work it out, could you do something similar? Could get a load of reeds from different companies and play them in a bit and compare each other. I think I've already done that. So I don't know whether I did that since you wrote this question. It's taken me a little while to get back to you, Sam. You should check out, I've done a video on my top 5 reeds. So that should be popping above my head now. And that goes through just my best ones. I used to swap a bit depending on what I was doing. Now I rarely do. The only time that I tend to swap reeds is if I'm playing in like a big band and I need to be really loud, which is so rare anyway. Or the other extreme, if I'm playing like every now and then I get a really weird gig like playing in a jewelry shop or something like that, and they want me to be super, super quiet. They love the idea of having a saxophone player there, and then when I come in, they actually realise it's quite loud. So I might change reed for that, but my general go-tos are in that video, so you might want to check that out. Okay, next up, who have we got here? Graham Gerard. What are you aiming for with the sax? Where do you want to be in the next 5 or 10 years? That's really interesting. Also, can you say more about your journey up till now? Everyone loves to see or hear a life story. Thanks for your videos. Oh, that's so nice, because I always like try not to blather on about where I've been and how I got here, really. But that's really nice. Okay, so where am I aiming? Well, 5 or 10 years. Right, so a couple of things on the bucket list. So I've played a couple of really nice festivals. Like I've done Love Box and I've done Creamfields. And obviously I've done like Edinburgh Festival years and years in a row. But I really, really would love to play Glastonbury. And I've got lots of friends in the industry that they're like, oh, off to Glastonbury for my gig. And I'm like, oh, I feel close because I play with that person a lot and they're playing Glastonbury. So Glastonbury's on my list. I've never gigged at Glastonbury and I would like to. I'm not saying main stage or anything, but somewhere I would like to be there. So that's on my bucket list. What else? I've kind of done all the big stages that I want to do. I've done the O2, I've done Wembley. I've never played with like a really decent celebrity. I don't think the Gareth Gates tour counts. But I would like, you know how Beyonce's got like a female horn section? Oh, that's like my dream gig. Or my friend is touring at the moment with Elbow. How cool is that? So jealous. Life envy. So yeah, maybe a decent celebrity tour would be cool. But at the same time, I travel so much as it is, work-wise, and I get quite homesick. I'm quite a home girl. So that's one of those pipe dreams, whereas actually, if I got offered a tour, but it turned out I was away for 6 months or something, there's no way I'd take it. I just wouldn't go. So it's one of those funny, careful what you wish for situations, that one. But Glastonbury's definitely on there. And my goals. Now, this is a funny one, actually. My stepfather is one of the most inspiring people. He's such a strong... I'm very fortunate. I've got lots of really, really strong male role models in my life. My dad is my hero. He's the one that made this. He just makes cool stuff in his free time for me and for his wife, and he's just such a legend. And my brother is this huge character as well. Like, if you think I'm extrovert, times me by 10, and you've got my brother. So I've got these huge male role models, and they're all very driven and ambitious. And one of the things my stepfather often asks me, he'll challenge me and say, so what's the plan? What's next? And when I say, I don't know, he's always like, well, how are you going to get where you're going if you don't know where to go? So he always thinks you should have a path, and even if that path turns a different corner or comes to a crossroads, you should always have a path in front of you. At the moment, quite quite want to just play a bit less, if I'm honest. So I guess I'm very fortunate. I have a career which meant that I could buy a lovely home in London, and I have nice things. I have nice saxophones. I have lots of support. I get to travel a lot. So I'm not in a position to complain about my job, but I do work quite long hours. And I think a bit of work-life balance over the next 5 years, quite a little bit maybe broody. So maybe a little mini-me in the next 5 years or so would be kind of cool. I say that now. One of my best friends has just had one, and it actually looks like really hard work. So we'll see. TBC. But certainly 10 years, I mean, I find that really hard to look that far ahead. I'm the kind of person that just before I go to bed, I have a quick look at the diary and see what I'm supposed to be doing the next day. And I don't really plan very far ahead. I kind of just go with it. And that's not my advice to anyone, but that's how I roll. So that's really nice of you to ask a little bit more about my background and how I got to here. I feel like I've kind of rambled on enough. If that is something that interests you, and if anyone else is interested in my musical history or just my background and how I came to become a session player in London, then give us a little comment on this video, and I might do a whole video on that and my progression to where I am now, because it's a funny one. I never meant to be here. I was meant to be a professional composer, but that's another story for another day. So yeah, tell me if you'd like to know about that. And I don't want to sort of ramble on about myself too much on the internet. Okay, let's have a look. John Greer. I've been learning alto for 8 months and also learning to read music. Now I play sheet music to a level. When practicing, I can play to myself without any mistakes, but as soon as I stand in front of friends, how do you control nerves and brain freeze? Mr. Greer, you clearly haven't watched my video on dealing with stage fright, which hopefully will be popping above my head now. Yes, you're talking to the right person actually, because I suffered with stage fright to extreme levels. So like when I did my grade 8, I threw up on that day. When I did my final recital for my degree, for my bimalons, I threw up 2 days beforehand. So I used to physically throw up. That's how bad it was. And I'd always kind of get away with it on the day, but I just remember that feeling of every single note you played, thinking it could all go wrong, it could all go wrong next. And it almost got worse the closer you got to the end of the piece, because you're like, oh, I've got this far, don't muck it up now. So it's all a head game. We've just had Wimbledon. If you watch Wimbledon tennis, and all the tears and the angst that you see those poor players going through, it's kind of a similar psyche. You've got to get mind over matter, otherwise you're going to get beaten in music. Like there's always going to be someone better than you, and it's kind of training yourself to be okay with the ability that you're at and the level that you're at, and just showing them what you've got really, and thinking that no one wants you to fail. You should never be in a position as a performer that you're playing to people that want you to fail. Like, I don't think those people exist anyway. So do watch that video. It gives you a little bit more information. It also gives you some practical things to do, like breathing exercises and mind exercises that can get yourself around nerves. But in brief, believe in yourself. Oh God, I'm such a hippie. Peace. Okay. Jeffrey Seiger, I think is how you say your name. Dear Chez, thank you for your great video. I play soprano, alto and tenor, but sometimes I'm confused for main saxophone for me. Okay. How we determine soprano, alto or tenor is the best saxophone. For me, soprano is easy to blow, more controlled. Alto sometimes uncontrolled. Tenor, I like the fat tone. Could you suggest? What is your saxophone? Well, you don't have to specialise. I think the only reason I've ended up specialising is because I'm better at the alto than the tenor. So I'm always like a little bit out of my depth with the tenor. I mean, I do play soprano and barry as well, but I feel like a right fraud when I'm playing those two. Soprano I was actually trained on. So if I was ever for like my final recital and everything. So if I was ever doing like contemporary stuff, I suppose soprano should technically be the one. But I think soprano for me needs a lot of practice to stay decent. I think the extremes, soprano and bari, both need quite a lot of practice to sound good. So the alto and the tenor are easier to kind of pick up and go in terms of intonation and tone control. So if you were choosing to between the two and you find them quite similar to play and you really want to specialise and overly practice, well, not overly practice, but practice one in particular, why don't you think about it in terms of what style of music you like to play? So I tend to associate the alto more with kind of beat bop, fast moving passages. House music it's great for because it's got that bit of bite behind it. It's a bit more cutting than tenor. I know loads of tenor players that play over DJ and house music, so that's not saying the alto is for house music, but just in my opinion, I think it's got a bit more punch to it. If I'm doing something sexy and sultry or anything kind of bluesy with a bit more kind of grit, then I would prefer the tenor to the alto. But you know, that's just my opinion. Go with what feels right for you. It's like it's like buying a pair of shoes. You've got to kind of wear them in. So keep working on it. I know people who bari is completely their specialist instrument. But it is probably best to choose one to practice. If you're trying to practice across all four, the progress level will be slower because obviously you're learning 4 different disciplines at once. Hope that was useful. I'm going to do one more and then take a little break. So that was Jeffrey. What we got here? Denzel. Cool name. I'm going to call my child Denzel. Hi, Chez. Just moved to an apartment complex. Oh, this sounds like something that's home from home for me. How do I practice without driving my neighbours crazy? Those small saxophone mutes you can put in the bell definitely don't do anything. Those weird big ones are expensive. Oh my God, this is actually really funny that you said that because I had such issues with my neighbours. They used to like bang on the ceiling. They used to like send nasty messages. And annoyingly, he worked from home, so there wasn't really a time. They seemed to have absolutely no social life. There didn't really ever seem to be a time where I could practice, and I put an acoustic floor in to try and help it. But it's like an old building in Clapham in London, like those beautiful Victorian buildings that just the walls are like paper. So in the end, I just killed him. No, I didn't. He moved. Luckily, one day, because they didn't even used to talk to me, we shared a front door. They were the downstairs flat, and they used to not talk to me. And I found it really distressing if I bumped into them or whatever in the street. But once I saw her, and she was wibbling along, and I thought, God, she put on weight. And I was like, oh, wait, no, she's pregnant. And their flat was a 1-bed flat, so then I was like, oh, well, they can't be there for that long if she's pregnant because you can't have a baby in a 1-bed flat for long. So eventually they did move and haven't had neighbours downstairs since. So I can't really answer your question. The only thing I can tell you is that there's not a lot they can do about it. So certainly in the UK anyway, legally, there's something to do with a decibel reading or what. It's very vague what constitutes as a nuisance. I think if you can be called a nuisance, so like for example a dog constantly barking, or a house alarm going off all the time, or a smoke alarm going off all the time, if it was regular enough. But the council decides what a nuisance is. I don't think there's anything really they can do about it. As long as you're doing it within kind of 9 to 5-ish hour, or like between 9 a.m. and let's say like 9 p.m. or even earlier, it might be disturbing for them, but life's a bitch basically. Tough luck. You moved in next door to a saxophonist. I think you're just gonna have to kind of be bold about it and just be like, well, sucks to be you. And live your life and try not to live your life around them because you're a saxophonist and that's what you do. It could be just as bad if you had a baby that screamed and cried all the time. They wouldn't be able to do anything about that, would they? So, try and ignore them. If they're messaging, ignore their messages. If they knock on the door, ignore the door. And, if it was to the point where they tried to take legal action, you tell them they're harassing you and actually you're playing within sociable hours and there's really not a lot they can do. So best of luck with that. I know what you've been through. I've been through the same, and it's really horrific and it's very debilitating because you feel insecure whenever you're playing. But if you keep playing, you'll get used to the idea that someone can hear you and you're disturbing someone. You just have to keep doing it. Like getting over stage fright, you've just got to keep doing it. So good luck. I'm going to call it a day there and put another video on with the rest of those questions. Bye guys, bye. So I am serious about this subscribing thing. Hit the button. Do it. Do it or I'll drop you back. I will. I'll do it.